That game made me angry at how good it was. I think I've been chasing that feeling with every game I've made ever since. Hi, I'm Neil Druckmann, and I'm here to talk games with BAFTA. My favorite game of all time is a game I come back to every couple of years and I replay it, and it's Monkey Island 2 by LucasArts. I love the series, including the last entry that just came out. It's one of the best written games I've ever played. I love the characters in it. It's one of the few games that is really funny. It's genuinely funny. I love that world of pirates. It's beautifully painted, just so well executed. And then for my money, as far as point and click adventure games, it's by far the best one. I grew up playing a lot of point and click adventure games like King's Quest, Space Quest, Monkey Island, Day of the Tentacle, name it, I've probably played it. And I was a purist in that I didn't like using guides unless I absolutely had to. I believe Monkey Island 2 only had a couple of puzzles that really stumped me. Otherwise, no guides were involved. First game I ever played, I believe, was Pong. It's hard to say for sure because I was really, really young, but my brother, who's 5.5 years older than me, was already into games by the time I was forming memories, and I remember him bringing a Pong machine home. So it was either that or chess on our VIC-20, one of those two. My most played game series has to be Super Mario Brothers. I've played and beaten and completed every mainline entry in that series. But my most played game of all time has to be Tetris. There are certain games that are just perfect in their mechanics, and you can't imagine anything to change. You change anything, it would fall apart. And Tetris is one of those games that is just perfect. Easy to play, hard to master. That's what makes such a fantastic game. My favorite mechanic is either the portal gun from Portal. That was revolutionary. I've never seen anything like that. It starts very simple, which is you shoot two portals, two holes at two locations in a 3D environment, and you could go through one portal and you'll exit at the other. And then the way that game keeps complicating that mechanic through changing the environment or by teaching you that you will carry your momentum as you go from one portal to another. So you could shoot one at the floor when you're like 2 stories up and then jump through it, and then you'll fly through that portal wherever you shot the other one. But probably the one that I was most impressed with emotionally is the hand-holding mechanic in ICO, where you're playing this kid trying to save this Princess Yorda from this castle, and one of the main ways you interact with her is you hold her hand because you guys speak different languages. So you can either call her over or grab her by the hand and lead her along. It's the fact that, I'm holding a button to hold her hand, and I feel this connection with this character through no dialogue, through no plot progression. It's purely on a mechanical level. I'm just making a physical connection with this character. You can't do that in movies. You can't do that in TV shows. It's what makes games so special. ICO was a huge inspiration for The Last of Us. In fact, when The Last of Us had many failed iterations before it became The Last of Us, the earliest of which was a pitch to George Romero, who created Night of the Living Dead, the writer-director. And in my pitch, I took characters from Sin City and used the mechanics of ICO, including a hand-holding mechanic, to pitch this game about these two characters, this older guy that lost his daughter, this younger girl that lost her dad, that would have to travel across the United States. Sometimes the kind of story you want to tell is in conflict with the kind of game you want people to play. And for us at Naughty Dog, any crazy idea could be our starting point, whether it's a gameplay mechanic, a visual motif, a narrative idea, and that just sets us on this road. And then these kind of 3 pillars, story, visual aesthetic, and visual, I include audio in that, and then gameplay. And then there's technology as well that drives all of it. They're all in conversation with each other. The technology kind of dictates what you can and can't do. The aesthetics is what you're going to see on the screen or hear through headphones or speakers. And then the story is just what happens in it. What kind of emotions are we after? And all those things must feed into each other, must work in concert. And often, you'll find a dissonant note, and that requires a change. A certain mechanic that we feel okay, this mechanic is imperative for this game, but it doesn't work with the story we're trying to tell, so the story must change. Or there might be something about the story that is really important for the experience that we're after, and a mechanic kind of just takes your mind somewhere else, or it's like invalidates what's happening in the story, the mechanics must change. And so that's how we're constantly making the thing until we're to our best, trying to make it all work in this marriage of sorts. My favorite narrative in the game is Monkey Island 2. I feel like I keep coming back to Monkey Island 2, but my favorite video game character of all time is Guybrush Threepwood, the protagonist in the Monkey Island series. He's kind of quirky and naive and very endearing in that way. And he can also be kind of a dick sometimes to the people close to him. And I just like following him around. He really also has just an interesting arc from starting from this very innocent place to where he ends up by the end of the series. I bet he would be fun to hang out with. A game I'm playing now. So I just finished Split Fiction, playing that with my son, and I absolutely loved it. Joseph Ferris does it again. I thought the ending was revolutionary. The way it played with both of the sci-fi world and the medieval world, and the way you would cross over between those two, it was brilliantly executed. And I've recently picked up Clair Obscur Expedition 33, and I'm about 5-6 hours into that, and I'm really enjoying it.
This is the big one now, the controversial one.
Oh.
Do you invert controllers or not?
You know, when I started at Naughty Dog, I was a vertical inverter. I think because I grew up playing PC games, and there were a lot of flight simulators, and I played Wing Commander, and there it made sense because it mirrored, like, you have the yoke on a plane or something, so pulling back on the stick means actually, you know, pulling the nose up. And then when I started working at Naughty Dog, no one else had inverted controls. So every time I had to go to someone's desk and play the game, and sometimes when you're playing the game while you're making it, you go into like debug mode and you're flying the camera around to look at different parts of the level. I would have to just go in the menu, switch the controls. The person would get frustrated at me that I'm messing with their controls just because I'd had such hard control. So then I just taught myself, like, I removed the inversion from my brain, and now I no longer invert. If you're flying a plane, it makes sense. If you're controlling a character or you're aiming a gun, it makes less sense.
What is your favorite moment in the game?
That's because I love talking about this one. My favorite moment in the game, the one that just made my jaw drop when it happened, is in the game ICO. We talked about how there's this mechanic where you're holding Yorda's hand and you're leading her along. Another mechanic that you have is, a lot of that game is traversal, like you're jumping gaps and you're climbing up. So one of the things you could do is go up to an edge and you hold your hand out. And then Yorda will kind of back up, sprint, and then jump, and you catch her, and it's this death-defying kind of moment every time you do it, and you pull her up. And she feels like this helpless character that you're leading along. And then there's a moment towards the end of the game where you're on this bridge that is slowly like splitting apart. And Yorda is on one side of it, and you're on the other, and you don't know what to do, and all you can do is just sprint towards that gap and jump towards her. And it looks like you are not going to make it, and you're going to fall to your death. And in the last second, she reaches out and she grabs you. And it was such an emotional moment because you don't expect it. And she's never done that at any other point in the game. And it just, to me, it was such an inspirational thing to see that, because it just felt, just through mechanics, it got me to care about this character. And just through mechanic, I got this twist and this evolution of this character and this relationship. That I don't know how you don't get emotional just playing that part. And I think I've been chasing that feeling with every game I've made ever since. Fumito Ueda, who wrote and directed those games, from ICO to Shadow of the Colossus to Last Guardian, I think he's one of the best game creators out there today. And his next game that we just got a tease at the last Game Awards is by far my most anticipated game. My favorite quote from a game, actually I heard it in the commercial for the game. It's by one of my favorite game writers, Ken Levine, a little game called BioShock. And the quote is, we all make choices, but in the end our choices make us. Which is such a beautiful kind of concept for that game, but also just a beautiful concept for writing, which is characters are defined by their choices. So I really love that play on words, and that quote. I repeat it so often. I annoy people with this quote.
Are you looking forward to Judas when that finally?
Oh my God, so much so. And it's I've become friends with Ken, and I hold back from asking to see it because I just want to play the final version.
But you want to know at the same time.
I want to know so much. He's He's also one of my favorite game makers, and I'm sure whatever he's doing will be revolutionary. I played BioShock when we were working on Uncharted 1, and I was so taken aback by its maturity. I've never seen characters like that with kind of backgrounds or that kind of dialogue, or a world that felt beautiful, inspiring, lived in, that has a history to it. The world felt like a real character that you wanted to explore and find out more. That game made me angry at how good it was. It felt like a AAA game that stood out because it trusted you as a player to fill in the gaps of the story. It trusted you as a player to use these mechanics in this very sandboxy sort of way and to figure out the enemies and their weaknesses. And that's what I mean. It just felt more mature than any AAA game I've seen in at least a long time. And I found it very inspiring. I remember toying with the idea of wanting to make games when I was very young, because I played a lot of early adventure games, Sierra games specifically. They would come with magazines where they would interview the game makers, and I would fantasize about, one day becoming like one of these people that makes video games. So I would design little adventure games on paper, and never took it very far beyond that. It wasn't until I was in college, and I was initially studying criminology. I thought I would go down this path of becoming an FBI agent and then have this cool experience and use that to become a writer. But I took an elective, a programming elective, and programming came relatively easy for me in a way that I thought that it wouldn't. I didn't think I was very technical. And all of a sudden, this light bulb moment happened, which, like, wait a minute, video games. How do people make video games? They have to come from somewhere. And then I just started going down the road. I changed my major to computer science, and that led me to eventually get an internship as a programmer at Naughty Dog.
Good career move.
Who knows? Maybe the other one would have been better.
Do you remember one of those early games that you kind of designed?
I did. I had a scenario. It's a very obscure game. There was a game called Jones in the Fast Lane, which was like a Sierra kind of digital board game. I don't even know how to describe it, but it had like such a quirky, weird art style. And I took that character and designed like an office adventure around this guy. I don't remember much more beyond that, but I designed like several rooms and puzzles with that character. Yeah, the scene I'm probably most proud of directing, and maybe I'm most proud of it because it was very early in my career, is Sarah's death in Last of Us 1. I when I started, I didn't quite know what I was doing. And one of the first conversations I had with both Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson, who played Joel and Ellie in the game, was, I'm sorry, I don't quite know what I'm doing. Please bear with me as we figure this out together. And I got to give Troy credit. We shot that scene one time, and I thought it was really good. But I got a little nervous of how many takes we're doing, and I convinced myself that we had it. And then I went and reviewed the edit and or all the different takes, and I'm like, it's good, but I know it could be so much better. And I invited Troy and Hannah Hayes, who played Sarah, back to the stage to shoot it again. And even though there was a bit of tension, because I think Troy thought that we got it before, he worked with me, and I think together we wrestled with the material, and we got it to like what I believe was a really great place that it really affect people. So yeah, I'm just incredibly proud of how that came about and the kind of collaboration. It really taught me how to work with others on the stage to find the best version, the most honest version of a scene. It really set the tone for the whole thing. And it was so important to get that right. There's a few kind of big differences and a lot of similarities between directing for a video game. I should say directing cinematics for a video game, because directing a game has a lot of components that are very, very different from directing a show. But the directing of the cinematics does carry a lot of overlap with directing a TV show. So things that are the same, is given art direction is given art direction, whether you're doing it on the screen or you're doing it in person. Directing a performance, talking to an actor, identical. Given comments on costume designs, VFX, editing a scene, picking camera angles, those are all the same skills. The big difference is the order of operation, where in the game, when you shoot a performance on the volume, on the mocap stage, you get all the actors' voices, you get their facial performance and their body movements in 3D space, so that the next day we can come in with a virtual camera and find our angles and see the performance from any angle that we want. We essentially got all the coverage we would ever need. And then we could change the costumes if we want. We could change the lighting. We could change the environment. I could even take someone's performance and put it on a totally different character if I wanted to, if there was a need for them. In live action, except with some exceptions with VFX, what you shoot is what the audience will see. So therefore, all those choices that you in a game could make after the fact, you must make before you shoot it. So you have to figure out your costumes, your camera angles, your coverage, where you're going to put the camera. Any decision that will be on the screen must be figured out beforehand. And then when you shoot it, you kind of hold your breath and you hope all these pieces will come together until you say cut. And then usually a bunch of things don't work and you have to give notes live in that moment and do your best to make it work before your day is over. And you have to get a certain number of shots. So it's the shooting, it can be a lot more stressful, and it's this high wire act in live action. But when you do get it, when all the pieces do come together, it's this high. It's almost like a drug. I could see why people love it so much. From that process, from the process of shooting live action, one of my biggest takeaway, and something I'm bringing back into games, is shooting either movies or TVs is a much older art form than making video games. Because of that, there's a higher level of organization, of planning, of production that I was really impressed by. Because sometimes in comparison, it feels like we're winging certain things on the video game side. So I wanted to bring that level of organization of, for example, how we break down a script with all the departments and go through props, lighting, costumes, anything that would be important, and figure out more things before we shoot, so that we're much more prepared by the time we shoot. That is something that I feel like we've leveled up quite a bit with the knowledge we got from live action. I had such a good time directing on the first season. I wanted to give it another go. I felt like there was a lot of, as an artist, you're constantly learning to grow and learn new skills and work with other really talented artists. And looking at the season, two things happened that convinced me that the price was the right episode for me to direct. One, I had a good conversation with Pedro, and he really wanted us to work together again. And I want another go at working with him, and Bella and everybody else. But specifically, he came and made this ask for me. And then two, that episode specifically just gets into the heart of what The Last of Us is about, especially that porch conversation, which was one of my favorite things to direct in the game. It felt very high stakes and it felt very important to the story. And I like when things feel a little dangerous. So for that reason, I picked that episode, and I cleared my schedule as much as I could and try to just do as much prep as possible. I really wanted to do a good job at it. And at the end, I was very proud of how it turned out. And I hope viewers feel the same. The thing that makes games special compared to other cinematic narrative arts is that games encapsulate almost all the other arts. In a game, you could put a painting, you could put a piece of music, you could put a whole movie if you wanted to. It wouldn't make for a very compelling game, but you could. You have all the tools of all these other mediums, along with the whole interactive aspect of them, which can elicit different emotions from passive mediums. So with a game, take, for example, Shadow of the Colossus. It's just an incredible game that as you're playing it and you're killing these beautiful creatures to try to save your partner, your lover, you feel a little dirty in what you're doing in that game. And it makes you feel guilty in a way that only games can make you feel. So to me, games are the ultimate expression of identifying with a character and putting you in a scenario where you could get all the emotions of passive mediums, along with all these other emotions like an adrenaline rush, caring, guilt, these things that are totally unique to the interactive medium. And that combination just makes video games very, very special.